Welcome everyone to Tales from the 90s. This week we are going back to July of 1995. I was 11 years old, getting ready to switch schools, and I'll be talking about this on this episode, and let's go.
Tales from the 90s never die. In our hearts they testify. VCRs and mixtape spins, where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons, wrestling wars and morning yawns. Play kickball in the street, man those days can't be beat. Tales from the 90s never die.
I want to say at the beginning, sorry about the noises you'll hear. One, the air conditioner. Two, it just started storming. And three, my dogs will probably bark at the thunder. But yeah, on this episode, we're going back to July of 1995. It's our 27th episode. The dogs are clapping for me with their teeth. But before we get into this, I do want to mention our bonus episode just came out yesterday. If you're watching this on Wednesday when I put it out, it was all about my musical roots, and then I give my favorite artists and groups and stuff like that from the 90s, and then some of their favorite songs. It's a list of 95 singers and groups and bands and stuff, not ranked. I didn't want to rank anything. I just wanted to just list them off and give some short memories. I try to keep it short. It's under 2 hours barely. But also make sure you check out, we've got Friday night karaoke. It'll be back to Friday this week after being Thursday the last couple weeks. And just some of the other stuff that's, who knows what I'll drop. Crackhead Dave will pop in from time to time. Just whatever I feel like recording, whatever I feel like you guys are liking. Leave me comments always, any kind of video ideas, anything I shouldn't be doing, whatever. But like I said, I was 11 years old back at this time. We're going back to July 1995. Like I said, I'm in between schools, and I'll get into that a little bit. But I want to start out by talking about a couple, something big in TV that's still affected things today. And I don't know exactly if it's for the better or for the worst. But it was in this month that Disney announced that they were purchasing and then merging with ABC, who owned ESPN. And that's when the whole ESPN or the Disney merger with ABC started. And like I said, it's for better or for worse. If you like everything together, and of course they've got 20th Century Fox, so they've got The Simpsons now on Disney, and they've got the rights to Star Wars and all this other stuff. I mean, it's good to have it all under one in some sense, but Disney is just so corporate and so just, I don't know. I don't know how this wasn't a monopoly at the time, but I don't know. There's something about Disney that just rubs me the wrong way these days. I love the Disney movies from the 90s, obviously. Lion King, Aladdin, Fox and the Hound. Well, that was a little before the 90s. Hercules, my all-time favorite Disney movie. But just, I don't know. It's raining hard. Dang. After that flooding we've had recently, that's real good news. It's not supposed to rain long today. It might do all the raining at once. I'm not talking about the rain of today. I'm talking about the freaking Disney merger of ABC back then. But yeah, and then of course you started getting on the ABC Saturday morning cartoons. You got more Disney stuff. I mean, in some ways it was a good thing. In some ways it's like with Hulu. Like if you got Hulu, Disney Plus, ESPN, all that bundle, if you have to get that ad free. Otherwise, every 10 minutes you're sitting through 3 or 4 minutes of commercials. Where on like Netflix you don't have as many. And I don't know about Peacock because I got them commercial free, but just they're always so corporate. But anyway, that's my memories of that. Speaking of memories, talk about TV. I grew up in Norwood, Ohio mostly, but also in other parts of Cincinnati like Price Hill, Newtown, Ohio, which technically wasn't Cincinnati, but it was close enough. It's okay, buddies. Dogs are scared of the storm. It's okay, buddies. But just so many memories of the local channels, because a lot of times that's all I got to watch, because we didn't have cable a lot in our house. I had to go to my granny's house to watch the good stuff. But you know, local channel 5 was NBC. CBS was on 9, although it originally was on 12. They flopped with no, I got that wrong. CBS was originally on 9, but then they went to 12. And then ABC was originally on 12, they went to 9. They kind of flopped at some point. I don't remember exactly when. And then Fox 19. Of course, I remember Fox going from, you know, just primetime shows at night. You know, Married with Children was pretty much what got their network going, that and The Simpsons, to expanding to having primetime every night, to eventually expanding to be an all-day thing, pretty much. It used to, you know, the Fox you know today, if you only know it from today, like your local Fox, wasn't nowhere near like it is now. It's like, you know, they're all like NBC, CBS, you know, Fox is in there with them now, but they used to not be anywhere as big or have as many Fox stations. And then, of course, we had Star 64, which was different things over the years, but I remember on the weekends they'd have the movies, and of course the Saturday cartoons, and they would show Reds games on there. And then one of my favorite channels was the WBQC Channel 25. It's where I first discovered ECW. After I didn't even know what it was, because it was on this channel at like 1 in the morning. I wasn't normally up then. But once I got to middle school, which I'll be talking about in a little bit, my friends introduced me to ECW through like these audio tapes. It wasn't even a video, just like he recorded an audio tape of him, of promos from ECW, and it got me hooked. But once I found this channel, it was crazy. They had all kinds of stuff on, because it was like a local channel. It became a WB at one point, it became a UPN at one point. But my favorite one was when it was just local. And I was 11, so I was becoming a teenager, so it would be a couple years before I would really be watching them in the middle of the night, because they'd be having those Hawaiian Tropic bikini contests and showing all the Girls Gone Wild commercials and the 1-900 phone numbers. Let's just say I watched that channel a lot. We'll leave it at that. But just, yeah, and you guys out there, if you're not from my local area, I'm sure you guys have fond memories of your local channels. Of course, there's always the public access. We had this one, well, not one, we had a couple public access. Quit! Before I go into that, of course, there's PBS, you know, where all the stuff from the 90s, Barney, Mr. Rogers. I didn't watch Teletubbies. Lamb Chops Play Along. But the public access is where just they could put anything in. I've seen some of the funniest stuff on those public access channels. Dogs, quit! They're not killing each other, I promise. They're just being them. But it's in the world's worst karaoke. I mean, me and my brothers would just go to this channel and just laugh all day. But there was this, of course they show local churches. There was one that was called Fireball Ministries, which I remember walking past one time. I was like, hey, it's Fireball. But there's always this woman up there screaming and like falling over, like the exaggerated stuff. They're going, Mama Cola, blah, 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 blah. Like over and over again. It's like you never know if those people are serious or if they're just putting on an act, you know. I don't know, because just they're so outlandish. But anyway, I'm sure you guys have seen stuff like that on your local channels, especially like early in the like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. You never know what could be on that thing. But speaking of TV, like I said, hardly got to watch Nickelodeon a whole lot. I may have been watching it at this time because it was July and I was probably at my granny's house, because I was over there a lot during the summer. But I'm going to go into the Nickelodeon lineup of this time. I'm going to pull it up here. So if you bear with me. Yeah, obviously love Nickelodeon when I could watch it. There were times we had cable at home. but it wasn't very often. It would be like on and then off, and of course everybody from the 90s will remember the evolution of cable, going from those boxes originally with the giant remotes where you push down the button on each one and it have the guide on it of what channels were, to, you know, more modern boxes with just a remote and you just push the buttons. And then of course I remember I don't know, 96, 97 when originally it was Warner Cable, and then the Time merger with Warner happened. It became Time Warner Cable, and they had those first boxes with the program guide built into it, because of course you remember the TV guide that, you know, we would just scroll and you'd have to sit there and watch it like you're waiting to see if your school's canceled the next day type thing. But go from that to like having an on-screen guide, that was like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. Like, you can go on here and you can go like back then it was just like 2 or 3 days in the future to see what was on, and you could set reminders. It was before DVR. That came in and that revolutionized everything. DVR was, whew. Ours got like 35 hours. I was always had that thing filled up. I miss it now. I miss cable and the kind of the way it was. Can't afford cable anymore, so I got some, you know, the streaming that I pay for, Sirius, which is radio, you know, XM radio. But I pay for Peacock, the Premium Plus, so that way I can watch the WWE pay-per-views, or PLEs as they're called now. The live events. I'm trying to remember what the P stands for. Premium live events. I knew it wasn't paid. But yeah, and then I've got Netflix so I can watch Raw. But that's the only 2 streamings I have now. But I sometimes miss the way cable was, you know, with DVR and stuff. Miss some of when they would come out with new channels like G4, you know, the gaming channel. Maybe I'll talk about some of them later on. That came after the 90s, I think. I think it was early 2000s, so really won't be much of a chance. I'll just talk about it on one just to do it, because I try to keep it centered in the 90s, but sometimes you gotta kind of, you know, look outside the 90s to talk about other things. But yeah, just I miss that, you know, the DVR and the music. Like, our cable had Music Choice. It was the best around Halloween. They had the greatest Halloween music going, and, you know, the country channels always had on there. Just a lot of good memories of cable. But I'm going to talk about Nickelodeon. This is a lineup from July 20th, 1995. It was a Thursday. And of course, kids were out of school, so they didn't have, I don't think they had Nick Jr. all day. Let me check. Well, they did have it in the morning. But usually Nick Jr. ran from morning till like 2 when kids got off school. But during the summer and on weekends, it didn't run as long. But we want to start with, of course, starting at midnight. They were on Nick at Night. We had Dick Van Dyke Show, Bob Newhart Show, Dragnet, Adventures of Superman. Again, not many memories of watching those at all. Paid programming at 2. If you guys remember that on a lot of channels, especially around this time of day, you know, a lot, especially the local ones, there was always paid programming. You know, the gadget of the week, where they, you know, it does this, it slices, it dices, or order this food, or the half hour where they got rock songs that are trying to get you buy this CD with 9,000 songs on it for 5 cents. Something exaggerated like that. But only a half hour of paid programming. I don't know why they even have it if you're just gonna have a half hour. But anyway, back to the shows. F Troop, Mary Tyler Moore Show, Taxi, Dick Van Dyke Show, Bob Newhart Show again, Dragnet, and then at 5:30 Nick News, which, you know, I would watch sometimes if there's nothing else on. But, you know, even though it's for kids, it's news. You're conditioned as kids that the news is boring, even if you would watch it and find that it's not always boring. But at 6 a.m., Mr. Wizard's World, my favorite. Everybody has their, you know, Bill Nye, the Science Guy, and Beakman's World. But to me, Mr. Wizard was always my favorite. And then we got Flipper, you know, another great old show that they had on Nickelodeon. Then we've got Bullwinkle's Moose-a-Rama at 7. This is a a version of the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. Those classic cartoons. Of course, they had the little cartoon shorts in between. Then at 7:30 a.m. we have Wild and Crazy Kids. I've talked about this many times before. Check out my top 50 Nickelodeon shows and cartoons of all time. It has a mix of Nickelodeon originals and reruns. Like Flipper obviously wasn't a Nickelodeon original, but it made my list because I watched it on there all the time. Anyway, Wild and Crazy Kids is like it's like a game show meets like field day at the end of the school year in elementary school. It was more of like, you know, athletic contests and stuff, but not real. Nobody won prizes, and it was like, you know, it wasn't like individual. It was like huge teams, like 3 teams. Then at 8 we've got Wienerville. I just seen an episode of this yesterday. I was watching a cartoon block or a Nickelodeon block from, I think it was from 95 to 98. Just different stuff in there. Most of it the Stickly, the 2 o'clock, you know, stuff that they had with Stickly the host. But Wienerville, that was a variety show hosted by Mark Wiener with just puppets, and they had Mr. Magoo cartoons and other things in between too. But that's a great variety show. And then 8:30 Gumby. Love Gumby. Obviously that's not an original, but it made my list. And it you know, Gumby's been around since the 50s. The version they had on Nickelodeon was the one that came back in the 80s, but it felt like you were watching it from the 50s. And then we've got Rugrats, one of the first 3 original Nicktoons. Then we got The Busy World of Richard Scarry. It says new season, so I guess they started a new season then. Love that one. Richard Scarry is an author, and his world was like a busy world. It had, you know, all kinds of stuff going on, and they're all animals. I remember Lowly the Worm driving this little Apple car. And then at 10 we got Muppet Babies. Yes, I have to do it that way. It's legally obligated. Muppet Babies, I love that one. I didn't like any of the other Muppet stuff, like ever, but the Muppet Babies I was always watching. Speaking of that, the Muppet Show was next. So, like I said, I always found that just be boring. Then we got Allegra's Window, which was a Nick Jr. show. Quit, buddy. And then Gullah Gullah Island after that. Those 2 came out at the same time. I believe this very year. They were probably in their first few episodes. 2 great shows that they put on Nick Jr. Gullah Gullah Island is my favorite of those. It baffled me to learn that Gullah Gullah Island, you know, where they're basing it on, is like off of South Carolina. It seems like it would be like, you know, further away, not part of the United States, but I guess technically it is, because it seems like such a foreign world away, but it's technically off the coast of South Carolina on an island. So I came to find out when doing my research for my top 50 that I just plugged, and I'm trying to. There goes my microphone. Stupid thing. I'm always battling this thing. Sometimes when I'm singing, I'm hitting it with my head. But anyway, next we've got Lassie, just like Flipper, great old show. Dog's always saving the day, just like with the dolphin and Flipper. Then we got Gumby again, Muppet Babies again. Alvin and the Chipmunks, new season. I love that version of Alvin and the Chipmunks. The theme song especially. Obviously I didn't like the newer movies, but that's me, you know I'm going to say that. Then at 2 we've got Beetlejuice, the cartoon. Love that more than I love the movie. Then we got Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon, because you gotta have Looney Tunes somewhere if you're having a cartoon lined up on anything. The Adventures of Tintin, that's a good one. It was a French cartoon that they dubbed in English. It's about this kid, he's like a reporter, and he's always going to help and solve crimes. A lot of times you tell people The Adventures of Tintin, they think you're talking about Rin Tin Tin. It's not Rin Tin Tin, it's Tintin. And then at 3:30 we have What Would You Do, hosted by Mark Summers. Sort of like the Wild and Crazy Kids. There were some prizes that were won on there, but it wasn't like a traditional game show like Double Dare. A lot of pies being thrown in people's faces, and they had the cards that they would take to people's heads, and you have to do what's on the card, or get pie thrown in your face, or go into the pie pod, or pie coaster, or whatever they were doing that day. Then we got Salute Your Shorts, about the summer camp, followed by Hey Dude, which is sort of in the same vein as that with teenagers, except this time they're working at a dude ranch. Love both of those shows. If I had to pick between Salute Your Shorts and Hey Dude of which one's my favorite, I would pick Hey Dude, but just slightly. We got Looney Tunes again, and we got Legends of the Hidden Temple. Anybody that watched this, and I looked it up, there was like only out of, I don't know how many episodes there were, 90 something, maybe even a little more than that. Like not even a fourth of the teams that made it to the last what you call it, the temple run, the 3 minutes where you got to go in and retrieve the item and come out. Not even a fourth of the teams that did it were able to beat it. That was one that it was rare to see that, and it just like you yelling at the TV, come on, don't do this or go this way. Like yesterday I was watching and this girl was trying to climb up the rope to climb up the thing when the host and her partner was like, just climb it up, because you could put your hands in the things and just climb up, but she was intent on climbing the rope even though she didn't have to. Finally she figured it out, but it wasted all her time. We got Rugrats again, and one of those original Nicktoons, Doug. The 3 original Nicktoons, if you didn't know, were Rugrats, Doug, and Ren and Stimpy. Doug was a great one that ended up getting sold to Disney, and a lot of people say that it didn't have the same spirit when it went to Disney as it did Nickelodeon. But it was still the same voice actors and artists, so you wouldn't really notice it, but you watch it back later, it's just like the writers for Disney just didn't get it. But then we've got Clarissa Explains It All, Melissa Joan Hart, everybody's crush in the 90s. She's of course most famous, I think, for Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but most of us 90s kids seen her on Clarissa Explains It All first. Her and her dorky brother you want to throw through a wall, Ferguson, and her weird parents. Her parents were just weird, but her mom was like the weirdest. Like her dad was sometimes normal, but her mom was just strange. And then, and that was it for Nickelodeon, because we go to Nick at Night. This was right before Snick would come onto the scene. Well, not Snick. Snick was already out. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is on Thursday. This ain't Saturday. But this is the time where Nickelodeon ended at 8. And a couple weeks ago, I did right before Snick came in. And it was like, on Saturday night, you get, like, I think Rugrats at 8:30, and then Nick at Night. But yeah, Thursday, even though it was during the summer, still, kids go to bed at 8. Because looks like we've got 3 hours worth of I Dream of Jeannie, then Taxi, and the Mary Tyler Moore Show to end it. So, but thank you to Nick Story Wiki on Fandom. I hate the Fandom site because it slows my computer down so much, but they got a lot of good information on there, like daily, like as you've seen, the whole day's worth of Nickelodeon. But yeah, that's the only thing I read off a list. I got like notes on here of stuff to talk about. I don't write anything out, obviously, as you can tell. But like I'm going to talk about my memories of just the differences between elementary school and middle school. I know a lot of people in a lot of areas, they call their middle school, they call it junior high. Ours was called middle school, so I always call everything middle school. And in a lot of areas, 6th grade is part of elementary school, but not at our school. I think they may have changed that. They went back, I don't know, but I know in some areas 6th grade is elementary school. Well, in our school, ended at 5th grade, and 6th grade started middle school. Now, our elementary school was called Norwood View. There was different elementary schools in Norwood, like Sharpsburg. I can't remember all the other ones. It's been forever. I never went to them, obviously. But Norwood was a pretty big town, comparatively. Obviously not as big as Cincinnati. But, it was big enough to have 4 or 5 elementary schools. But, Norwood View is, great school from what I remember. I didn't get there till the middle of 3rd grade, so it's not like I, grew up there in kindergarten or anything. But, it's just so many great memories from those times there. Like, just everything. You have your classrooms, because normally in school, I don't know how they do it these days. I think even in elementary school, they may break them up like they do in high school, where each class goes to a different room for this class. But in elementary school, you were in the same class every day. Of course, you had your subjects you go to, like gym. You go to the gym, obviously. Health, you go to the health room. And then what was the other? I'm forgetting one. I know I'm forgetting one. Music. I knew I was forgetting it. You either go to the music room or the band room or whatever it happened to be. But starting in 5th grade is when they started doing class rotations, where you just try to get you to learn, because that's what it was in middle school. Every class had a you'd have your home room, which I always found stupid. You go to homeroom for like 15 minutes and then go to your first class, unless your first class happened to be also in that home room. It's like, why even? I guess they had to take attendance or something, but still, it seemed kind of weird. You go in there for like 15 minutes and then everybody goes to their classes. But yeah, elementary school, they started a little bit of you had your main teacher, but then you would go to another teacher for a class a day or a couple classes a day, just to get you in, started on how to rotate classes, because it was a big deal. And of course, one of the biggest differences between elementary school and middle school was no recess. Which I always wish they would have had recess. Can't tell me some middle school kids wouldn't have benefited from recess. Hell, even high school kids could benefit from recess. But yeah, that was one of the big differences. But another huge difference is the distance in the school. Our school district didn't have buses, because everybody was at least like within a mile of the school, and our house was like literally the second to last house in Norwood. So I was like on one of the farthest ends, so I had to walk a mile to middle school. To Norwood View, it was, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. About 15 minutes. It wasn't 20 minutes. If I was goofing off, it was. But yeah, having to do that walk, and of course, they didn't have buses, so they don't have to worry. And like the schools around here, you get the littlest amount of snow and there's delays and closures, because the I can't ever say that word. I can't talk. The areas with gravel roads and crap. Those areas, they can't get those smaller roads and the gravel roads plowed and stuff. So a lot of snow closures happen and other things. Not with us, unless it was like 8 inches of snow or something. And even then, sometimes it'd just be a delay. You had to get there, because even if your parents can't bring you, you can walk. Was their attitude. That was a long walk over there. Like I said, it was about a mile away, and I'm not a mile uphill both ways. There were some hilly areas, but luckily it was mostly flat. Luckily. But and a big difference was also the time that it started. Norwood View started at 8:45. Norwood Middle School started at 8. High school started at 7:30. So that was a big difference. Like, not only do I have to get up earlier, because school starts 45 minutes earlier when I go to middle school, but I got to walk a mile, so I got to factor that in. So I was leaving every day at I tried to leave by 7:15, but half the time I'd end up late. It became my thing every day to get up at 6, wake up and watch the Munsters. That was always on. I remember of course, that wasn't my first time seeing the Munsters, but I love the Munsters, so I would get up and watch them. If it was cold out, I would sit on the heater vent with the blanket over me, and a lot of times I would fall back asleep. But eat cereal in the morning, of course. Back then, breakfast, it was served, but there was no, we didn't have free lunch when I was in school. But even if you did, the free lunch doesn't cover breakfast, which I always found stupid. But yeah, and just the difference in middle school, like I said, each class has its own classroom, and it depends on how your school was set up. Ours it changed throughout the time. First of all, they had these in middle school, they had, or six, was it six? I think it was the whole middle school, just because it was so big. They had broken into clusters, the red cluster and the blue cluster. I was on the red cluster, and then next year you swap colors. Well, when I failed 7th grade, I ended up being in both clusters, obviously. But The only difference in it is the teachers, and you know, it wasn't like one's like for smarter kids or one's for trouble kids. It's just, you know, you're randomly put into clusters, just, you know, to try to break it up even more besides the individual classes, because there's just so many kids. But you know, you'd have your classes, and then you'd have lunch, of course, which lunch you go over to the high school, which there was a bridge that was built, because our middle school was actually the original high school, and they built the high school later on, and they put like a bridge over there. But the middle school was by far the bigger school, and like I said, there always seemed to be more people in there. I don't know why there was more, seemed to be more, maybe it just seemed like it. But we had a great school system. Thinking back, our high school had a freaking planetarium. I remember one of the first field trips, walking down to that school from Norwood View in elementary school to go to the planetarium. That was always an awesome day to get to do that. Just like, that was so cool to look at that. I'm assuming they still have it. If not, it's definitely sad, because that was an advanced thing for the time. And of course, the middle school gym, they had what they called the field house, which was like the big, huge gym where they do the basketball games and stuff, and where everybody would normally play. But they also had the boys' gym and the girls' gym, which, you know, was called that because that was the locker rooms. But sometimes the boys would go in the girls' gym and the girls would go in the boys' gym, you know, after everybody's changed, obviously. But and I remember the boys' gym had this upstairs like track, like way above, like, you know, track where you run up there. Like, thinking about it now, there's no way I'd go up there. It was so rickety. But at the time, so it's like, oh, let's go up there and run. But one of my favorite things to play, I've talked about before, was mat ball, which is like kickball, but you use these giant gym mats as bases. And the big difference is like obviously the huge amount of players on the team. Like, you could have 20 people on your team. But you kick the ball, obviously. If you hit the Indian head, which was our mascot, the Norwood Indian, it was automatic home run, but that was like hard to do. But you also got to go around to first, because see, in mat ball, you could go home and stop and score and be done. That's fine. But if you wanted to continue, you could try to run back. You could run around bases as long as you possibly can. I've seen some people be on there 6 or 7 times before they get out, because of course you throw the ball at them to get out, or if they catch the ball in the air. You know, that was a huge difference, is you could just keep going around. I told before about they made a rule of no headfirst sliding because of me, because I slid headfirst right into a freaking pole. Can't say I wasn't competitive. I loved mat ball. But just the biggest difference, though, was just all the amount of kids. You know, you had, you know, the people you went to school with were there, but they were sprinkled out, not just individual classrooms, but clusters. And if you're in a different cluster, that means you're not in classes with them at all. If you're only in classes with the people you're in the cluster with. So, and it was a cluster. No, but what I was going to say before, but I forgot to, is there's different formats, and they experimented with this, and I don't know what they have now, but you have your normal format of like 7 classes, where each class was like 45 minutes long. But they also had block classes, which were like, you have like 4 classes a day for like an hour and a half. And, you know, the difference is for the 7 classes with 45 minutes, you know, you just do it like a normal year. You know, 4 quarters is, you know, of course they're broken into quarters, and then semesters, 2 quarters in a semester. But for block classes, you could get your, you know, a half semester done, you know, in the time it takes to get 9 weeks done, which was a quarter. But, you know, it depends on, I'm sure there's probably even other ways at different schools. Let me know how your school was set up and stuff. It's just, like I said, but the biggest difference was definitely all the new people. And, you know, some of your friends, you know, I didn't have many friends, but, you know, you were hoping they were in the same cluster, because you'd at least get to see them in some classes, you know, maybe. But if they weren't in your cluster, you wouldn't get to see them at all until recess. Or not recess, what am I talking about? Lunch. About the only time you get to hang out, really, unless you got there early from school or afterwards. But just, you know, that transition period is just, one of those milestones in life. And, like I said, some schools went to 6th grade in elementary school. Ours went to 5th. 6th grade was middle school. But, yeah, that's just a little bit there. I'm going to talk a little bit about books now. My favorite author of all time is Stephen King, and during this month he came out with his book Rose Madder, which I've read. Really good book. It's about domestic violence. It's about a woman that's like beaten by her husband, who's a police officer, so obviously she can't call the cops. But she finally gets the strength to run away from him, and then ends up going to this like woman's shelter type place. But it's not just like a shelter. They like help you find an apartment and teach you to how to make it on your own. Well, and she knows he's going to be coming after her, and he finally finds her. But she gets this painting, and it's like she knows there's something off with this painting. Well, she ends up, when he finally gets there, he starts like killing people, like some of the people from the shelter or people that have helped her. And then finally he's there after her, in her apartment, and she ends up leading him into the painting and killing him there, leaving him there. So obviously there's no evidence. Kind of sealed him in the painting. It's been forever since I've read it, so I don't remember the exact details, but I do remember it being a really good book. But I wasn't reading that at the time. I was definitely reading Goosebumps, and Goosebumps had a few books that came out, especially were really, along with the TV series, they were really pumping out not just the regular Goosebumps books, but different versions of them. R.L. Stine, one of the best to do it. Goosebumps number 33 came out this month. It was The Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, which I've never read. It's about a sports camp where the counselors are like obsessed with winning, and like they seem a little too happy from what I've read. I'm gonna have to read that someday. Then another one that came out that month was the Goosebumps More Tales to Give You Goosebumps, and this was in the Tales to Give You Goosebumps series, which was trying to capitalize off the popularity of the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, because that got huge. This was like 10 short stories. It's not really ripping it off, but it's trying to be in the same vein of that. Speaking of that, another one that came out was the very first Give Yourself Goosebumps book, which was a take on the Choose Your Own Adventure books, which those were, if you've never heard of those before, never seen them, try to find one at your local library. Those are great books. It's where you start an adventure, and you eventually get to a point where it says, to do this, go to this page, or to choose this, go to this page. Or sometimes you get 3 choices or more. But this was their version, so they not only had choices, but they also had like puzzles to try to solve. If you got the wrong answer, obviously you're going the wrong way. Or sometimes it was like a game, like sometimes you just flip a coin to tell where you're going. And and of course with those, along with Choose Your Own Adventure books, you don't just read it until you either come to an end where you die, although it don't ever say you die because it don't want to say that in kids' books, but it makes it clear that you're dead, or you come to an end where you basically succeed at whatever you're doing in the book. But you never just read to the end. You always went back, and you would have bookmarks in this place, because you'd try to do the outcomes of everything. Your goal was to try to read every page of the book, but obviously you don't read it. If you ever tried to read one of those books front to back, just in order, it'd drive you crazy. But you try to reach all possible outcomes, once you're done with it. You don't just read it once, because, that's 15 minutes, but it really put reading into more of an active role besides just reading. Really helped with some kids that didn't like reading, because it's like playing along with a video game basically. But yeah, I've only read a couple of those Give Yourself Goosebumps books. I'd love to read a bunch more of them, but I forgot to have it over here. I got this movie in a 4-pack, so it's not by itself. But the movie that came out this month that I loved so much, I went and seen in theaters, was The Indian in the Cupboard. That was just, man, me and my brothers love that. And just some of the lines from it, where he's trying to tell the kid, plastic people. If you don't know The Indian in the Cupboard, it's about this kid who has this, who got this cupboard, and then like this magical key that had been in his family, and he put it in there, and he put his action figures in it. Well, he turned the key, and the action figures came to life. like, but they're small, but suppose they came from different times in history. They weren't just action figures. They represented somebody that was like alive at some point. But he's got to keep it secret, and his friend tells people, and he's a jerk. But really love that movie. And of course, it has his friend has a cowboy, and he has the Indian. So I know that it's not politically correct terms these days. I'm not meaning it in any kind of derogatory way, other than that's what people called people. It's Christopher Columbus is an idiot and thought he was in India, so he called him Indians. I don't know why that turned into being a racist term when it was originally just meant because that's where he thought he was. It should be just a stupid term. I know they're Native Americans, but this isn't called Native American in the cover. So I'm using the language that was on there. And if I'm wrong and I'm offending anybody, I truly am not trying to. I'm not trying to make a joke out of it. It's just, that's what it's called. But obviously the Cowboys and Indians, Cowboys and Native Americans thing, obviously there's going to be tension there, and the Cowboys trying to shoot the Native American. But they end up becoming sort of friends at the end. But I'd later learned that, because we'd read the book in school, and when it came out, we had to read the book afterwards. But I later found out as an adult that there was a whole 5-book series. There was that came out after this. There was a sequel, but there was also showing like where it came from, and how this was in this kid's family, and also going into the future. Just if you check out the Indian in the Cupboard book series, I don't know if you can find all of them together, but I know I've gotten individual ones from the library over the years. I've read the series like twice now. I might read it again. It's so good. Just a great way of it's if you like stories and like continuing and prequels and stuff and sequels and all that, but you like you wish it was better done, or it don't really seem to fit. This is one that's well done if you read it from the first book, Indian in the Cupboard, all the way through to the 5th book. If you read it, it's really great series. But I want to talk about some music now. I always like to give the Billboard Hot 100, even though I wasn't listening to the music at the time. The number one song was, it was number one the first week of July, but actually it was at the end of a 5-week run at number one. It was Bryan Adams' Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman? Now, I've never really heard the song. But the one song I have heard, which shows how big and pop culture it was, because I heard it and I wasn't listening to the music, was Waterfalls by TLC. It was number one for the last 4 weeks of July, and then 3 more weeks in August, so it had 7 weeks total. But that was everybody knows the Waterfalls song. It's it has a lot of social issues. It talks about AIDS in a time where that was really becoming such a topic where people were scared of, and it was, you should be scared of it, obviously, but it was becoming an epidemic. And this song tackles that, and drug use, and other kinds of stuff. Is like and it's one of those songs I ended up hearing, even though I didn't listen to any station it would have been on. But if I knew it, then it was definitely crossed pop culture, big time. But because I was always listening to country music, and I listened to the American Country Countdown with Bob Kingsley every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. I'd always listen to that. But number one song was Sold, the Grundy County Auction Incident. That's the full title, by John Michael Montgomery. That song the video is hilarious. It's got Amish people dancing, but it is a super fast song. It's meant to mimic like an auction. But it was number one for 3 weeks. And then Shania Twain's Any Man of Mine was number one for 2 weeks. That was the song that really got her to becoming a superstar. Off that, her second album, The Woman in Me, she put out Who's Better, Have Your Boots Been Under, was her first song off of that. And it was, it was big, but not like this, like huge, like Any Man of Mine. That was the video where, the famous, she's dancing and showing her midriff. That was a big thing then. Like, you could see her belly button. Like, imagine now when people wear almost nothing on TV and people don't even bat an eye, And a belly button. Should we ban it or should... There was really talk about whether the video should be played. Like, crazy how times have changed, and obviously not that much for the better. But an album that was released this month was Tracy Byrd's Love Lessons. It was his third album. It sold gold, which is 500,000 copies. The title track, Love Lessons, which is a great song, got in the top 10. The other two didn't, that were released as singles, but they were still great songs. Walking to Jerusalem is a funny song. And by the title, it sounds like it's some serious song, like you're like going on a spiritual journey. Listen to this song, and the video is hilarious too. And then Heaven in My Woman's Eyes was also released as a single. Great song. Some sad news in music. On July 25th, Charlie Rich, who's most well known for Behind Closed Doors, one of the all-time greatest songs in country music, he died of a pulmonary embolism on July 25th. I want to go into wrestling now because I'm huge into wrestling. I'm a wrestling announcer. I do videos sometimes. I play music. But ECW at the time, like I just talked about that before, I wasn't watching at the time, but they had, back then they weren't on pay-per-view yet, and they had these things called super cards where you'd normally have your normal shows, but then you'd have a super card, which is a basic way of saying it's a pay-per-view without being on pay-per-view. But they had two of them this month. They had Hardcore Heaven, July 1st. It was actually the second Hardcore Heaven. And the main event was the Public Enemy defeating the Gangstas. And then ECW Heatwave was held 2 weeks later. Again, the second Heatwave, and it was also from the ECW arena. And in the main event of that steel cage match, the Public Enemy defeated the Gangstas in a steel cage. I know I got that wrong. The Gangstas defeated Public Enemy. It was like they swapped wins there. But yeah, just those early ECW shows, you know, when they became extreme, you know, obviously tons of violence in those matches. WCW had their Bash at the Beach on July 16th. That was their second ever Bash at the Beach, and it was actually held on the beach in Huntington Beach, California. Randy Savage defeated Ric Flair in a lifeguard match, which is basically a lumberjack match, but it was on the beach. But they had the lumberjacks, which if you've never seen wrestling, a lumberjack match is where you have a bunch of people standing outside, and the basic premise is if somebody gets on the outside, you know, like trying to run away, they get thrown back in. Well, of course, in lumberjack matches, you see people purposely throw others on the outside, and then them getting beat down by, you know, the bad guys get beat by the good guys get beat by the bad guys. But like I said, lifeguard match because it's on the beach. But also they had women in swimsuits, and I don't know if any actresses from the show, but they were filming parts of the match got released on an episode of Baywatch where they had wrestlers on there because they filmed that at the same time, but they made it look like the match was a part of the Baywatch or was actually shown in Baywatch, like part of the show. But in the main event, WCW World Champion Hulk Hogan defeated Big Van Vader in a steel cage match. And then WWF had their second ever In Your House, which was called the Lumberjacks. It was from Nashville, Tennessee. It was on July 27th. Shawn Michaels defeated Intercontinental Champion Jeff Jarrett to win the title. WWF Champion Diesel retained his title. He beat Psycho Sid in a lumberjack match. And then the main event and a casket match, The Undertaker defeated Kama Mustafa, more well known today as the Godfather, in a casket match. So, couple title changes that didn't happen to the pay-per-views. On July 21st, Dean Malenko defeated ECW TV champion Arrow for the TV title on Hardcore TV, which is, you know, their syndicated show, which I didn't even realize was on Channel 25 at the time. And then a week later, Eddie won it back on Hardcore TV. Out of here, a couple more things to talk about. Talk about sports. Of course, being in July, we're right in the middle of baseball season. The leaders for the National League were I can't talk. What's new there? The Reds, Braves, and the Rockies. And the American League was led by the Indians, Angels, and the Red Sox. And of course, that was the Indians are now the Guardians, again with the name change. And the Angels were the California Angels at the time. Now they're the Los Angeles Angels. But My favorite team, obviously the Reds. I'm wearing a Bengals hat, but being from Cincinnati, my favorite team, the Reds. They made the playoffs. They got to the league championship series, but got swept by Atlanta. The Braves, they ended up beating Cleveland in the World Series. But the players of the month for this month were Dante Bichette for the National League and Garrett Anderson of the American League. And the pitchers of the month were Greg Maddux, obviously of the Braves, his heyday, and Tim Wakefield. And of course, being July, the All-Star Game was held this month. It was in the ballpark in Arlington, which was where the Texas Rangers played at the time. National League beat the American League 3-2. Reds that made the All-Star team were pitcher John Smiley, shortstop Barry Larkin, obviously legend there, Ron Gant, and Reggie Sanders. Frank Thomas ended up winning the Home Run Derby that year. And then a little bit of NASCAR news. Jeff Gordon won back-to-back races. He won the Pepsi 400, which was like the Daytona night race there, and also the Slick 5300 at New Hampshire. And of course, that was the year Jeff Gordon won his very first NASCAR championship. And you can see why right there. Dale Jarrett won the Miller Genuine Draft 400 at Pocono, and also Sterling Marlin won the Die Hard 500 at Talladega. So that's your NASCAR rundown there. Jeff Gordon, my all-time favorite. It was the very first year he was on top. And wind up with just a little bit of news, a little sad news. July 4th, Bob Ross died. Obviously iconic on PBS. Everybody knows Bob Ross from his paintings and his gentle demeanor and just the way he talked. Just everybody, you always see the jokes. So, he's a serial killer, and all the paintings are where he hid his bodies. Hopefully nobody actually believes any of that stuff. But he was just like the kindest man, and everybody from the 90s, you had to at least seen Bob Ross at least once, if not a lot. He was always on Saturday mornings with those paintings that he made look so effortless, but they were so good. And like, I wish I could own one of his paintings, even not an original, just a reprint of one. They're just, such good stuff. Like I said, such a gentle guy. He loved animals. He just looked like he'd give you the shirt off his back. Just a great, can't say enough good things about him. But sad way to wind up this week, but that's how we're going to do it. Like I said, check out all our other stuff. I forgot to mention the bonus episode for April. I think I have it down here when it is. May 5th. It'll be a Monday. The first Monday in May, I will be releasing my next bonus episode, and that will be all about my favorite Saturday morning cartoons and shows. It's sort of like my Nickelodeon list. It's got cartoons and shows. Obviously, Saturday morning cartoons is the more dominant one. Everybody, the Batman animated series. But I also include the shows too, like Power Rangers. How can I make a Saturday morning cartoon list and not put Power Rangers just because it's called cartoons? So, Saturday morning kids TV, we'll call it. I'll rank my top 50. As of right now, I don't actually know what my number one is. Unlike my other ones, all my other lists I've done where I've known what the number one's going to be, I don't know what that's going to be. But that's for the bonus episode. Next time you're with us here on the main Tales from the 90s podcast, I'm actually excited because for the first time, I'm doing a month in 1996, which is the last year I haven't done one yet. So, believe it or not, I haven't done one from 1996, which I consider my favorite year growing up as a kid. But this will be April 1996, and I was 12 years old at the time and was getting towards the end of 6th grade. So, as you see in this one, we're in July of 1995. We're transitioning schools, getting ready to start 6th grade. At the other one, we'll be getting towards the end of 6th grade, and I'll give some stories about some friends I made and some not so friends I made in 1996. A funny story about me getting thrown over the desk because I was being an idiot and running my mouth to someone way bigger than me. Yeah, that's kind of stupid, and I kind of learned. But yeah, join us for that. That'll be next week in April 1996. First time we're going into 1996. Can't wait till I get to talk about the freaking Olympic torch going through town, and obviously I'll do that when it's time to talk the month for the Olympics. Can't remember whether it's July or August. Can't remember exact the date, but whichever one it is, when I finally get to that, that's going to be a fun one. But thanks for joining us on the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Tales from the 90s never die. In our hearts they testify. VCRs and mixtape spins, where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons, wrestling wars.